Hi everyone, welcome back to the processes in the project management body of knowledge. This one in particular is closing the project or the phase. And as you can see in the project integration management knowledge area, and even in this last closing process group, basically it's the only one. Once everything is done, once we've planned the project, once we've executed on the project, once we've monitored and controlled the project, then everything has been delivered and accepted, then all we need to do is close off that project or phase. But there are certain things that we need to do as part of this process just to make sure that everything is tucked away nice and neatly, and even so that lessons are learned for the next project as well. But what is closing the project or phase? Basically, it's the process of finalizing all activities for the project or for the phase or contract. And the phase might be a milestone that you'll see. That might be another term that you might see come up on the PMP exam. Why do we do this process? We basically do it so that the project or phase information is archived and the planned work is completed and the organizational team resources can be released to pursue new endeavors. So now we're not keeping them on board, we're not still using their time or any costs involved, and we can release everything back to the business or that particular area and they can go and do their normal work or go and do new projects. Here's an overview of closed project or phase. The project manager reviews the project management plan to ensure that all of the project work has been completed and the project has met its objectives. So that includes, activities might include, confirming the delivery and formal acceptance of the deliverables by the customer. So who we're delivering this project to, the customer, are they happy and do they confirm that everything has been delivered to the right specification? We're ensuring that all the costs are charged to the project and closing the project accounts. So finalizing all of those accounts, making sure that no one can charge anything more to the project because it's now finished. We're finalizing any open claims. A claim, as you'll see later on, is where maybe we've delivered something but the customer does not agree that that was what was supposed to be delivered. And we say, yes, it was, and so we can't agree, and so a claim is opened. And then it goes through the claim management process. And that's a process that's outlined in your project management plan as well. And if you can't agree there, a third party will come in and help mediate that claim. But we're wanting to finalize any open claims, if any claims have been made. We're archiving project information for future use. Audit project success or failure. So how did it go? Do we need to do a retrospective? What went well? What did not go well? What still puzzles me and what did I learn? Actions and activities necessary to transfer the project's products, services or results to the next phase or to the customer, or BAU, or operations, business as usual, or all the normal operations. And we're measuring the benefits as well and the stakeholder satisfaction. So does it give us the benefit that we said it would give us when we did that initial business case and project charter all the way back at the beginning of initiating this project? Inputs, tools and techniques, and outputs for closed project or phase. For inputs, we've got the project charter. So this is that initial document. Did it do what we said it would do initially? Yes or no? And what happened if not? The project management plan, all the deliverables. What are they? Have they been delivered as we had planned? Project documents. Accepted deliverables, all the accepted deliverables. They're an input into this because they have to be accepted and closed off, sent back to the business or to the customer. Business documents, any agreements, and procurement documentation. So can we finalize that procurement? Anyone that we've asked or paid to do work for us, any third parties, and organizational process assets or templates that might be involved. Tools and techniques that we'll use, as always, expert judgment comes into play. We might need people's expert opinions or expertise, and we need to gather that from them as we go along. Data analysis, so trends, variances, what happened versus what was planned, and meetings to gather all of that information. And the outputs of this process, we've got project documents updates, mostly the lessons learned register as we finalize everything, and the final product, service or result transition back to BAU or operations, as we were saying. The final report, which is a nice summary of what's happened and the outcomes, and any organizational process assets updates. As you can see, there are a lot of inputs into close project or phase. We've got project management plan, develop the project charter, validating the scope, planning, procurement management. All of those processes will form an input into this, and the output, but closed project or phase, will have an input itself into the customer, delivering it back to the customer, any project documents, lessons learned register, and the enterprise or organizational process assets. Let's look at the inputs in a little bit more detail. The project charter documents the project success criteria right at the very beginning, the approval requirements and who will sign off on the project. So how did it go? Did it meet with what was required at the very beginning? The project management plan, all of those components are an input into this because we need to know all aspects of our project, from cost, schedule, the scope itself, any quality items, were there any issues with testing? Has it been validated by our stakeholder and accepted by our stakeholders? All of those things will need to be an input into closing the project or phase. Just like that, project documents as well. So change logs, issue logs, milestones lists, project communications, quality reports, the risk register or risk reports, what has happened as the project has gone along. Those will impact the way we close the project or the phase. And of course, the accepted deliverables, so including approved product specifications, so what was accepted and how did it go. The business case and the business benefits management plan. So how did we say we were going to measure the benefits right at the very beginning? Was it an increase in a certain thing or a decrease in defects, for example? How were we measuring it and what were we using to measure it? And so now we actually have to go ahead and do that now that we're closing the project off and it's been delivered back to the business. And any agreements, of course, they're needed when procurement or contracts are involved. Their terms and conditions will hold the requirements for the formal procurement closure of that contract. Now, procurement documentation, if we've outsourced anything to close the contract, all procurement documentation is collected, indexed and filed, and organizational process assets. So configuration management knowledge base, where we've got our baselined documents, which is in our configuration management plan, and project or phase closure guidelines or requirements. So how did we say we would close this project in the first place? Tools and techniques for closed project or phase. We will need our expert judgment, as always, for things like audits. So an external party might come in and audit our project and say, did it follow the right procedures? So we're going to need expert judgment to make sure that it actually did follow the right guidelines. Management control, legal and procurement for any of those contracts, and legislation and regulations. Maybe we're delivering something into the business, it's changing a regulation or it's meeting a regulation. Now we need to check in with the experts on that area, make sure that it's doing what it was needed. Data analysis would include trend analysis and variance. So what did we say we were going to do and what actually was achieved? Document analysis, so we need to go over all of those documents, any risk documents, any of the scope documents, make sure that, again, what was outlined at the very beginning. And regression analysis. Now, meetings are used to tie all of this stuff together. So we'll use meetings as part of our project to confirm that the deliverables have been accepted. So we might meet with our project stakeholder and say, here it is, does it meet your expectations? We might validate that the exit criteria has been met, evaluate the satisfaction of our stakeholders, and gather lessons learned. We might transfer knowledge and information from the project back into BAU, as it was saying before. And of course, we might celebrate success when it's gone well. These can be face-to-face, virtual, they can be formal meetings, or they can be informal meetings, depending on the way your project is laid out or as it evolves over time. And it can include closeout reporting meetings, customer wrap-up meetings, lessons learned meetings, and celebration meetings, of course. The outputs of closing your project or your phase will include project documents updates. So all project documents may be updated and marked as final versions, finally, as a result of the project closure. Of particular interest is the lessons learned register, because we will want to capture those lessons and actually write them down and file them in an appropriate place depending on the organization. Hopefully there's a central place for lessons learned. Not often that there is, but if there isn't, maybe you can make one, and so that you've got those lessons for future projects. The final product, service, or result transition back to business as usual. So once it's delivered by the project, it has to be handed over to a different group or to the organization that will use it on a day-to-day basis, will operate, maintain, and support it throughout its life cycle. This output refers to the transition of the final product, the service or result, that the project was authorized to produce in the first place. And this goes from the project team back to the operational team or the functional team. When we're transitioning that product back, we'll have our final report. So the final report will outline things like what were the scope objectives, quality objectives, cost objectives, summary of the validation of information for the final product, service, or result, schedule objectives, of course, and then a summary of how the final product achieved those business needs that were identified in the business plan, and also a summary of any risks or issues encountered on the project and how they were addressed, and potentially any risks that have been delivered into the organization as a part of this project as well. Also very important to have. Organizational process assets updates will include project documents, operational and support documents, project or phase closure documents, and of course our lessons learned repository. And that is closing the project or phase as part of the project management body of knowledge.